Hey folks, Prof Psych here. Don't forget to follow Prof Psych on Instagram, some interesting little snippets about psychology, and keep up on YouTube. Okay, today we're going to just look at lots of little snippets, some odd bits, but cram them into one quick short video. And you can see case studies, pilot studies, peer review, and psychology in the economy. So we're going to whiz straight away into case studies. What do we mean by a case study? A case study is a study of an individual or a very small group of people, particularly, for example, a family group. The key thing is that they must share some unique traits, something that makes them atypical, in other words, unusual, and that's what makes them interesting to study. Let's take two examples here. In attachment, you may well come across Jeannie, who had a very, very low level of care from a very tiny age. And we are able to study her as a case to see what happened to her future development and ability to show attachments herself. An interesting, unique case. This is H.M., Henry Molaison, who suffered from retrograde amnesia. So you'll come across H.M. if you study memory, and we certainly learned a lot from him as a case at the time about different types of memory. Now, I'm not going to delve into these too much as cases, but the interesting thing here is they are unique, okay? They have very interesting atypical traits, which makes them fascinating cases to study. Now, what are the strengths of case studies? Well, real rich detail. If you have access to somebody like Jeannie here, then you are able to study her in real detail, whether that's biographical, whether it's measuring aspects like IQ, doesn't matter how, but quite often real in-depth information and data. Of course, there'll be real life cases, makes that very relevant in terms of its validity. And also, of course, they may be the only way we can ethically study something. Let's take HM. We're not going to be able to create memory deficits in people to study different types of memory, but we can take someone like HM because he's already suffered that amnesia, and then we can study the effects of it. Are there any negatives? Yes, there are, okay? Some would argue it's not representative of a wider population because, of course, they're not typical of a wider population. In some respects, certainly with someone like Jeannie, there has been accusations of researcher bias, researchers trying to prove certain things and therefore possibly interpreting the information, the data they're receiving in a certain way, okay? At times, in case studies, there's a reliance on memory, retrospective data, them going back in their own memories to describe occurrences, and that might be difficult. And of course here, there's a potential problem with reliability. Can you replicate cases like this that are so unique? No, not necessarily. And therefore, can you find the same results repeatedly and the results are reliable? That's very difficult to do. Okay, so there's case studies. Pilot studies, something totally different. Okay, I'm going to do a bit of research. I've decided on what I want to investigate. Well, I better test out my method first and everything about my study in advance of doing it. Why? Because I want to save time. So a pilot study is like a practice, a small scale piece of research that I do. So I'm going to conduct my investigation, testing my method, whether it's sampling, whether it's how I'm going to actually gather the data, everything about the method and the analysis of the data and the presentation of the results to see whether I need to change anything. One of the advantages of this, of course, is that I could ask participants themselves, did I need to change anything? Okay, do they understand the questions in questionnaires? Did they display demand characteristics? So we can get direct feedback from participants to be able to allow us to change how we might investigate. Okay. Pilot studies, of course, can also be used to see, is this likely to discover something? Are we investigating the thing we think we're looking into? And are we likely to find actually some significant results? And if not, maybe we investigate in a different way. So pilot studies done before the research, allowing us, of course, to adapt that research before launching into more time investment, possibly more financial investment into wider scale research. Okay, now let's imagine I've done my research, done my pilot study, it's all good, I've made my modifications, I've conducted my research. Now I want to publish it. Peer review is critical here, because otherwise, why do we have to peer review something? Well, if we don't, then we don't scrutinize research, and people could fabricate results, could claim to find things that haven't actually been scrutinized and checked. So a peer review is where my report, having done the investigation, my report is scrutinized by a panel of experts in that field who represent a particular journal. Those experts will read the report and will analyse and scrutinise whether it should be published. There are three possible outcomes here. Firstly, my report, my investigation will be accepted for publication. Brilliant, everything has been done well. Second alternative, the panel of experts may propose modifications. For example, were the results presented? Should they run some more statistical tests? And once those modifications are made, then it would be forwarded and published, forwarded for publication. Or third, and very important process, the piece of research might be rejected altogether for publication. It might be too fundamentally flawed. Okay? This is important, so research is only published that has been scrutinised and gone through the process of peer review. Now, some people do say there are some flaws and some criticisms, if you like, of peer review itself. Okay, it may be likely that only research that fits with mainstream findings is more likely to be accepted. Okay, in other words, we don't necessarily like something or feel so easy about accepting some new results that take us beyond the norms and the expected findings. Okay, peer review may be subject to bias, particularly, of course, if a piece of research contradicts those people on the panel who are themselves experts in the field and may have published previous work themselves. Okay, and one thing very interesting, there is evidence to suggest that research is more likely to get accepted if it finds something new. It proves its hypothesis. Okay, when actually it's equally important sometimes to find nothing. Okay, sometimes accepting a null hypothesis is just as important as accepting an experimental hypothesis. Okay, peer review. Psychology and the economy. Strange little bit on some syllabuses like AQA, okay, but really important. The economy, all about finance, okay? Now, here, really we're looking about how does psychological research have an impact on the economy? The economy, pound notes, okay? Money, all right? Now, one of the best ways to apply this, of course, is to look at how research into things like therapies can change how people can function. For example, approximately 1 in 3 people at some point will receive therapy of some type for mental health issues, okay? Now, that's important, isn't it? Because logically, if we suffer from mental health, it may leave us unable to join the workforce. If we can't work, therefore, how does the government finance that? Costs the government money with unemployment and having to on the social system and so on, okay? However, we could argue directly, of course, if psychological research develops therapies, develops new therapies, makes them more successful, more effective, then more people will return back to work, okay? This, of course, means they'll contribute to the economy in basic things. They're able to have money themselves, their wages, their salaries, that they can spend, buy products, services and so on. They'll be paying tax back into the economy, all right? And arguably as well, they're putting less pressure on other services such as the health service, policing, prisons, because they're functioning better in society. So, psychological research impacting on the economy. Now, can extend into other things, okay? Let's think about those mental illnesses, those mental health issues that might be impacted. Think of something like OCD, okay? Somebody who's unable to function because of the condition of OCD. What about things like phobias? For example, just having a fear of social spaces. Now, therapies can help somebody to overcome those phobias, to allow them to function in an environment, for example, like open spaces. Okay, and as we said before, many people, a significant proportion, will suffer from mental illnesses like depression, and the therapies, of course, will help them to tackle that, to overcome those, and to therefore function and to contribute to the economy. Now, I want you to have a think yourself about this photo, okay? This is childcare, isn't it? The idea of children going to somebody to be looked after. Now, what does that mean for the parents? What does it mean if we have trained people from a very young age looking after our babies, our infants? What does that allow the parents to do? And how might that benefit the economy? I'm thinking about employment here and work. See if you can think of that. What about this? What about the role of the father nowadays in bringing up the children, okay? In modern times. How does that affect the economy? What will that mean for the mother in terms of work, employment, and so on, okay? So many areas here where before we looked at the idea of treatments for mental illness, okay? And here I'm delving into, if you like, other areas like childcare, like attachment theories, okay? To see how the understanding of that might contribute to the economy. All right, so I want you to do a bit of thinking about that. Okay, folks, that's the end of today. Don't forget to follow Prof Psych on Instagram. More videos to come. Features of a science report next. Okay, enjoy. Have a good day.